I think it's okay the way it is. You okay with lights? So they are so nice.
Well,
We're not using our cameras. You guys want to watch it? I can sit on and let you see it. I only have 4 minutes left. I can back it up real quick. Let's try. Let's try. Yeah. This is it all.
We are a couple of minutes early. We're going to start right on time, folks. We're going to start right on time. So don't stop talking. You still got a couple of minutes. All right. It's okay with everybody. I'll take my mask off up here behind the plexiglass. purposes, work group, time to purpose. Sure, sir. I so much appreciate you. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you. So, waiting for class grade 3. I'm showing we have 1 minute before we can start. Commissioner Cummings, thank you so much. So much, right on time. Stay. All right, so it's 3 o'clock. John Scherster, I'm the Chief Judge of the Second Circuit Court. I'm the judge member of the Children's Services Council of Leon County. First, I'd like to welcome you all to this publicly noticed inaugural organizational meeting of the Leon County Children's Services Council. What a privilege it is to be with you today. First, I'd ask that Ms. Goodman-Taylor please call the roll so that we can fulfill our responsibility to keep accurate minutes.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, council members. Please announce Ms. Carter Connor. Present. Commissioner Carolyn Cummings. Present. Ms. Amanda Glenn. Present. Superintendent Ron Indiana. Ms. Liza McFadden. Present. Mr. Paul Mitchell.
Present.
DCF Northwest Region Director Lonnie Scott.
Present.
The Honorable Jonathan Churchman.
Present.
School Board Member Alvin Strickland. Present.
Thank you so much. So on my count, 9 council members of 10 present. This is an organizational meeting. It's organizational. We have no choice but to be organizational because we do not have any officers or bylaws or staff or money. This is an organizational meeting. That's the purpose of this meeting. What we have is a vote of confidence by the community we're charged to fulfill. And we have 2 hours today to start getting organized. We have to end on time because I probably foolishly noticed this meeting for an end time, 2 hours. And I'm a little worried about that. The first item on the agenda is the agenda. And there's a lot of it. And I'm not at all confident that we're going to be able to get through the whole agenda in 2 hours, but we're going to do our best. I'm nervous about it for another reason too, which is that I asked for this meeting to start. I don't really have any authority to do that. I certainly don't have any more authority than the other council. In fact, I have less authority than the council. The judge, by statute, the judge member of the committee is forbidden from participating in ad valorem, the setting of ad valorem taxation. And so if anybody feels like the meeting's not running properly or wants to run the meeting in a different way, feel free. I am well aware that there's a lot more experience in local government in this room than I am. But I was nervous. I wanted us to get started. I was worried the time was getting away from us, and so I had to go ahead and get started. I want to talk a little bit about, before we get to the agenda, the running of the meeting. I'm hoping, like I said, we don't have any rules. And so I'm hoping we do this sort of by consensus. I want to do this basically the way the county commission does things. We need to provide for public comment for the members of the public who are here. There's comment cards if anybody wants to make comments. Please just fill out a card, give it to Ms. Goodman-Taylor, and we'll recognize you comment. Of course, the sunshine law applies. It's no public meeting. Before we do anything, before we make any decisions, I'd ask that we loosely follow the county commission's decorum rules. Basically, 3 minutes for your comments. Treat each other respectfully. Council members talk about time, and of course, Ms. Goodman-Taylor. We keep minutes. The first thing on the agenda is to swear us in. We'll do that in just a minute. I want to talk a little bit about the structure of the agenda. There he is, Mr. O'Brien. I started without you, sir. I hope you will forgive me. Thank you. And by the way, my count was wrong. 9 out of 10 now. Now we have 9 out of 10. But after we swear in, and we have my cherished colleague, Tiffany Baker Carper here, is our juvenile delinquency judge, is present to administer an oath for us. We'll do that just momentarily. But the agenda is really divided into 2 parts, orientation and organization. The orientation part, agenda 3, mandatory responsibilities under the ordinance, also the statute governs us. Agenda 5 is the sunshine law. And we have experts here to inform us about the organization of the council. Ms. Michelle Watson, the chief executive of the Florida Children's Council, is here to address us. Property appraiser Akeem Akinyemi and his team is here to address us. Thank you so much. And County Attorney Osteen is here. That's agenda items 6 and 7, which is steps to establish a legal and effective organization and for an interlocal agreement for start. That leaves us with the organizational parts. The first is to establish officers. That's agenda item 4. Bylaws, agenda item 8. Schedule of future meetings, the agenda for the next meeting. And then time permitting, agenda items 11 is member comment. After we swear in, I'll just ask that we each take a moment to introduce ourselves to each other into the community. We are being broadcast, I think. The great Isaac Schuler, our unbelievably long-suffering court technology officer, is here making sure that we get out on live stream. time permitting for member comment, because item 12, which is the last item, is public comment, and that is mandatory. And anytime we have an item to vote on, we have to make certain that the public has an opportunity to comment. So that's how I thought we would run the meeting. I have no authority, as I said, to decide how we run the meeting. But I would just ask, is there any objection to running the meeting? Yes, sir. Commissioner Cummings, thank you.
Yes, just such from, I accept your comments about the mode that the meeting should be run, except I would, I guess, move that the public comment be moved up to the beginning of the section 2 organization. I don't know, I always find it valuable to hear from the public, your public comment before we take action or vote as a body. So I just move that the public comment be moved up before section 2, the organization.
Fair enough.
That's where we vote.
Is it acceptable we go ahead and swear ourselves in and then take the public comment? You want to do it that way, or you want to?
I just think it should be, not at the end. I'd like to hear from the public before, absolutely.
Sure. Is that acceptable to everybody? Public comment at the beginning? Public comment at the beginning?
That would do it. Yes, sir.
All right, that's fine. That is certainly fine by me. So with your consensus, I just ask Judge Baker Carper if she would please come up and administer the oaths of office. That would be just fine.
Point of order, do we need a motion to approve the agenda?
Say again?
Do we need a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
The agenda approved as amended. Robert's rules, I think, is being invoked on.
We don't like that. As a non-leader of this organization.
A motion has been made to amend the agenda. Is there a second? Any discussion? Any objection? Without objection, we'll show the agenda amended to the public comment after the oaths and introduction. So, Judge Baker Carper, you are recognized.
Thank you. And I just want to go on record and say we really do have the best chief judge in the entire state of Florida. Not at all, and I know he's super humble, so I know he's not very pleased that I'm calling him out like this, but this community and this council is very fortunate to have the chief as well as all of you serving on this council, so thank you. Without further ado, are you ready? All right, can I have you all stand? Please raise your right hands. And repeat after me. I do solemnly swear.
I solemnly swear
That I will support.
that I will support,
Protect and defend.
protect, and defend
The Constitution and the governments of the United States.
the Constitution and government of the United States
And the state of Florida.
and the state of Florida.
That I am duly qualified to hold office.
I am duly qualified to hold office
Under the Constitution of the state.
under the Constitution of the state.
And that I will well and faithfully.
And that I will well and faithfully
Perform the duties of a member. Of the Children's Services Council.
Children's Services Council of
Leon County.
Leon County.
On which I am now about to enter.
On which I am now about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Judge Baker Carper.
Thank you.
Outstanding. Before we go to the public comment, the agenda item 1 just includes an introduction of us, and then we'll go to the public comment. comments. So with your permission, I'll start going. I've been going alphabetical order. So I'm John Churchill. I'm the Chief Judge of the Second Circuit Court. I'm the judge member. I've been working on the Children's Services Council since I was on the planning committee. Some of the folks here work with us those 9 months to do a work. Please. Principal Connor.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carmen Connor, and I'm a lifelong resident of Tallahassee, and I'm pleased to be here. And I'm the principal of Pine Hill.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Cummings.
I'm Carolyn Cummings, the Leon County Commission designee as a member of this committee.
Thank you so much. Dr. Glenn.
Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Glenn, and I'm a pharmacist by training. I have a lot to learn from everybody here, but it's my pleasure and my honor to be a member of this council. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. McFadden.
Hi, I'm Liza McFadden. I serve as a consultant to human services groups and philanthropist. And in my past, have done a lot of work in literacy, formerly serving as the president of our Bush Foundation for Literacy. So that's work with children's councils across the state and kind of a light bulb moment to be really thrilled.
Mr. Mitchell.
Hey, I'm Paul Mitchell. I'm a partner with the lobbying firm of the Southern Group. I've been a resident of Leon County this go around since 1988, and I am incredibly pleased.
Mr. O'Brien.
I'm Mark O'Brien. I'm the CEO of Dallas Memorial Healthcare. I think most of us recognize that organization is the community's not-for-profit regional health system. We provide tertiary primary services for a broad region, including North Florida, Alabama, Southern Alabama, and a very strong program and a growing program for pediatrics.
And Mr.
Thank you. I'm Alice Flynn. I'm with the Leon County School Board member. I was a member of the CSC Planning Council that we participated in the last 2 years. So it's an awesome process. I'm honored to be appointed by my fellow school board members to be on my committee this year. I would like to take a moment just to share with you, Superintendent Rocky Hanna has been ill this week. Those of you who know him know it's very passionate about the children in this community, and this is not something he takes lightly. He would absolutely be here if he's able to. He's at home resting, and we are honored to have Assistant Superintendent Michelle here with us instead. It's my understanding she is not a voting member on this body, or not his designee, as is the DPF, but she is here instead today. We would very much like to.
Thank you so much. So now public comment. Is there anyone that you're receiving any? Oh, Mr. Sack. I'm sorry.
Good afternoon. I'm Walter Sox. I'm the Northwest Regional Managing Director at DCF. I was also on the planning committee for the CSC. I have been in Tallahassee since 1961. I was a little younger then. As I was on the council committee, I actually got reassigned to Tampa for 8 months, and I served on the children's board of Hillsborough County for those 8 months. So I got a little bit of CSC experience. And then also, interesting enough, I'm serving on the Escambia County CSC. So I get to see two CSCs grow at the same time. Good to hear.
Thank you so much. All right, so now public comment. Do we have any public comment cards? Very good. Thank you, Mr. Levine.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, and members of council. I'm so thrilled to be here for so many reasons, which I don't have much time to explain. But first off, is to really give a compliment to each of you who chose to be available for this service. It's a very important service, as you know. It's important to the voters of Florida, to the voters of Leon County, and to every family who works and lives within our boundaries. My wife and I came here in 1978, where we raised 2 sons in this county, and I'm very, very pleased with the spectrum of services Mr. O'Brien, you would probably be very thrilled to know we got great service through both birds. I have visited all of the children's service councils that have operated in Florida. As many of you know, the first was established in 1946 in Pinellas County called the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County. That's a 75-year-old tradition of excellence. And we have since then gotten to 9 before this last election, and now we're at 11. Michelle, you'll check my numbers on that. Escambia and Leon County. My bottom line in being an advocate for children statewide is the reality that when it comes to children, it's not whether we pay, it's when. And that is a plea and also a documentation of prevention. My definition of prevention simply is keeping bad things from happening. And one of the roles of this council, I believe, is not only assessing the need, which for 2 years you have worked very assiduously to do that under the judge's good auspices, but also it's very important for us to realize that the data and research continues to flow, documenting how prevention does work. So I will plead for you, once we start programming, to open your ears, open your eyes, and open your hearts, of course, to every opportunity to keep bad things from happening to our children. I'll also let you know that, in case you're unaware of this statistic, Leon County is home to 3,000 newborns a year, 250 a month. I think that comes to about 30-some a week. There are no days off, right, Mr. O'Brien? No days off. So we have a moving opportunity to invest wisely in prenatal care all the way through the teen years, and of course, the family status, both economic and educational. I'll close by saying it's been a pleasure to visit your sister and brother councils around the state. I will encourage you to get to know them, and through Michelle and her good association, that will be an introduction. We'll be standing on some very, very fortified shoulders as we learn their process and their achievements. And on behalf of statewide network of advocates and this community where I'm thrilled to reside, I want to thank you again and congratulate you for this great work. Together, we will work wonders. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much, Mr. Levine. Any other speakers? Any other commenters?
Next, we have this. Okay.
Nice to see you again.
Thank you. My name is Emily Fritz, and my address is 1433 Bucare Drive, Tallahassee, 32308. And I'm talking about something that I doubt if you will get to today, but I wanted to bring it up early in your process. And it's about the needs assessment, which you are required to do according to the statute. I would like to ask you to be absolutely thorough and don't rush the needs assessment. That is your roadmap on what you should do. And if that's not thorough, then everything will go down the wrong road. So I think that's critical. I also think the needs assessment should have an inventory of the existing programs and services that are currently being offered to children. Because you don't know what you need if you don't know what you already have. And that inventory should include the state and federal programs as well. WIC, Medicaid, Healthy Start, all Healthy Kids, all of that stuff. And not only do you need it just to make good decisions, but the statute prohibits you from supplanting state and federal funds. So you've got to know what the federal and state programs are doing, and you can't duplicate. So that's another reason why you need a thorough inventory of the existing programs. That will take some time, and I know you've got a time crunch, but please don't skimp on that. I would also recommend that you use a different consultant than the one that did the planning report. You need something much more comprehensive. And to eliminate any bias or even the perception of biases, I would recommend that you not utilize a member of the nonprofit community. You don't want any criticisms of how it's done. And there are a number of consulting firms that do this type of work. So I urge you to invest the time and effort in doing that. One other thing is I would like to recommend that these meetings be televised. I know you're live streaming, but that's not as good as television. And this room is set up for television. Comcast airs county meetings on Channel 16 at no charge. And that provides maximum transparency. And I think for this committee, maximum transparency is essential. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comment cards?
Yes, Your Honor, Mr. Charles Macklin.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. My name is Charles Bagwell, and I've appointed myself to represent a very large group in our county, and none of them know I'm doing it. But those are the people that I signed in with at the school to volunteer. We have a very large group that does that. They're very committed to the interest of the children, which we all are, should be enthusiastic and supportive in this activity. The only other thing I've got to say is I read a lot in early childhood development. And there's a quote that's come up that I think if we could adopt that as an operating meeting, so let's start the meeting with this thought. It's actually very short. It goes like this. See if I can remember. Relationships grow at the speed of trust. Social change moves at the speed of relationships. So until we can develop a relationship in putting the program together and focused in the right place, then we can't expect to move much downstream. So just remember those two things, very, very important. Relationship moves at the speed of trust. If you and I trust each other, we can get along and we can do things. We know we can. Social change is when everybody trusts each other, things start to happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comment cards?
One more for your right hand.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Whitehead. I live here in the county at 6989 Napa Court, which is on the east side. I'm very excited about the opportunity just to briefly speak to you all. I don't have a lot that I'm going to share, but this is an exciting opportunity for Leon County. I've been working with children's issues from a policy perspective my entire career. I started with the issues back when Governor Martinez was in office, and I worked during his tenure to develop policy regarding children. And then I served as staff director of the Florida Commission on Juvenile Justice for about 2.5 years. And the result of that effort was to develop policy that separated HR, that separated juvenile justice from HR and created standalone Department of Juvenile Justice, which continues, to be there and to this day. Obviously, here locally, I've been very active with the school district. I've served on school advisory councils for about 13 years. I've served on the district advisory council for about 5 or 6 years. And I think that over that, and then back in the 90s, we didn't have a Children's Services Council because that requires a public vote. But we did have a Leon County Juvenile Justice Council. And I served on that council along with Mayor Heisberg at that time and Mrs. Anita Davis and others who some of you might know. I just briefly want to share that this is an exciting opportunity for Leon County. I think I did look at the planning committee report. I think that it is a beginning place, it's a starting point. Obviously, you do have to dig a little bit deeper into the data, but I think as a place to begin, I think it frames out some of the key things that you all are going to need to look at. And since you do have a time frame, it kind of organizes and frames out the things that you all are going to need to do from the very beginning. I'll kind of leave you with this. One thing that we did back with the Juvenile Justice Council is we had input directly from children, and we actually had a child member on the council that worked out very well for us to get that kind of input. And I do suggest that you consider that, to have a youth advisory council and or an ad hoc youth member on the council. The children who served were very bright, very articulate, very engaged. And I think with that kind of input, you actually get a sense for what's going on in youth. And it's not like a second or third party sense, it's actually a direct line. So I strongly urge you to consider doing that. But other than that, I think you're on the right track. Obviously, you would need to do strategic planning. You would need to do a needs assessment. You would need to look at what the gaps are currently in services within the county. You would need to look at what programs are available. And foremost, you would need to look at accountability since you're dealing with public funds. And if you put accountability measures in place up front, then it's easier for the programs that get funded to actually start off on the right foot. And then you have the ability to assess their progress and the outcomes that you as a council want to see for the county. So I wish you well and congratulations on your appointment. And again, this is very exciting for Leon County and the youth who live here.
Thank you so much. Any other comment, Carl? Very good. Thanks so much. So that brings us to agenda item 3. Agenda item 3 is really just to bring to your attention. If you turn to the agenda item pages 5, 6, and 7, as the mandatory things that the council shall. This is really just orientation. Children's Services Council shall immediately elect the chairman and the vice chairman and other officers as being necessary by the council. 2, identify and assess the needs of children. I'm not going to read the entire thing. 3, provide training and orientation to new members. This is my presumption that we're performing training and orientation today. 4, make and adopt bylaws and regulations. And then if you turn to page 7, 9, shall maintain minutes of each. So that's kind of what I had in mind when I designed this agenda. I don't know if there's any discussion of that or not. I know that's a very brief recitation of our duties and responsibilities. Yes, Member Strickland, you are recognized.
Where will the minutes have?
Right now, well, I'm hoping when we get to officers that will appoint somebody to sort of be the clerk of the committee and keep them there until we can get a website up and running.
The minutes will be kept for public consumption on request or?
Hard copy on request. To be perfectly candid, I have not given that much thought at this moment.
Understandable. I'm wondering if the county would use a camera system, maybe cause our agenda minutes somewhere underneath their website for the temporary, and I don't even know.
And I think so far they have done that.
Okay.
I think they were good enough to put the package for today's meeting as well as the agenda. Commissioner Cummings might know more about this than I do, I suspect.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
I was under the impression you were trying to get my attention, that you were trying to be heard. I'm sorry.
No, I wasn't drawing. Not now. Oh, thank you.
My apologies. All right, Mr. Clement.
So I'm just wondering if we need to have someone request for the company, like someone to do that on the council, i.e. I would volunteer myself to do that.
Yes, is there a motion in the second to have member Strickland take the lead on asking the county to house our minutes?
Move that. You have
What
you have
happens
a
when you ask
motion?
questions?
Oh, I'm sorry. What was I supposed to do that?
I'm happy to do that.
All right. Very good.
Judge Schorstrom. As it relates to the next item on the agenda, I'd like to make a motion, but before I make the motion, in terms of organizational officers, I would appreciate my fellow council members that just kind of hearing me out. First, I'd like the council consider at least 2 officers, which the statute mandates, and that's a chairman and a vice chairman. So we have to do that. The other officers, we don't have to do, but those 2 we do have to do. I think it would be a very good idea to have to do our best to diversify the chair and the co-chair. And that means all diversity. I'm thinking sort of through this, and I think there should be one from the public sector and one from the non-public sector, the private sector. And as it relates to Ms. Connor, I kind of put you in the non-public sector because you're not an elected official. Second thing I would say, or kind of 1A under the non-public sector, is I'd like to take my name out of consideration. And if you were beating down the door to ask me, but I'm not looking for the job. But I think it's important that that as it relates to accountability to this community, and you know, Ms. Fritz, I've heard your comments, and I think they're incredibly important, and Mr. Whitehead as well. Accountability is important, and this isn't just another governmental entity. So I hope you'll consider that. With that as a lead-in, Judge Schorstrom, just as a member of this community, I was sharing with a friend on the way up in the elevator. The only time I ever come in this building is too often, I might add, for jury duty. But the one thing I can tell you from outside this.
Thank you for that.
Yes, once every 15 months. No, thank you. But it's your reputation, sir. Your reputation from outside this building. Your reputation in terms of fighting for children. You know, I'm a father of 3 boys, and I'm glad to say that there really have not been any gaps they've had to face. But there are a lot of kids in this community that do face gaps. And sir, I've watched you, I've heard you, I've gone to children's summits, and I think you're a remarkable man, and you've done a great service to this community. My motion would be that, 1, consider the diversity of the chair and the co-chair, but that's less of a motion. My main motion is that we as a council select Judge Schorstrom as our chair.
Commissioner Cummings, is there discussion? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Sundstrom. I totally agree. I believe that we are fortunate to have Mr. Sundstrom on this council, and he was also a member of the Children's Services Council Committee for 2 years that studied the need for this council. So I not only second the motion, but I highly recommend Mr. Sundstrom be certainly one of my highly respected jurists, very competent, and I think without question, I think he's what we call it a no-brainer.
I'm really good at the no-brainers.
So there's going to be discussion, because I'm going to have some discussion. Here's the thing about it. I can think of a bunch of reasons why the judge is not the best person to be the chair. The main one, which is that the judge has less authority than everybody else, and there's going to be things that I'm not permitted to do. The statute says that I'm forbidden from participating in the setting of ad valorem taxes. What I would propose, if it's the will of the committee for me to serve as the chair, that I serve as the organizational chair for us to get started. Get us started, and a year from now, we're gonna have another chairperson. Because the judge is specifically limited in what the judge is supposed to be doing. I don't want to overstep those bounds, and I don't want to presume that this is appropriate for me to be the chair just because I'm the one that sent out notice.
So for the purpose of discussion, we have the opportunity to nominate an elected chair and have the ability to revisit that at any point in time.
I would think we would set the term in the bylaws, which is an 8. So, and plus, there's not indentured servitude. I can step down.
We have a vice chair, right?
That's right, the vice chair.
That being said, I mean, in nominating you as the chair, we haven't defined terms yet. We are in an organizational state. We haven't raised taxes yet. Now we need time. I think it would be appropriate to make that election. Unless there is
The election for
the chair.
Oh, sure.
Since we are in an organizational state, we can always get back to enforce that.
All right.
Reconsideration.
Fair enough. Any other nomination? Any other?
I'll never read down his back.
Mr. Mitchell was the only one who explicitly said he refused. Thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
This is like a lot of honors that I've gotten in my career where there's about 5 minutes of honor, and there's about a year and a half of working, But it's a tremendous, spectacular, unbelievable honor for a guy who barely graduated high school and is a proud graduate of Okaloosa Woman. There's been a motion and a second. Any other debate? Any other discussion? Well, I think that's unanimous. According to the minutes. All right, so now we're on agenda item 4, vice chair. A private sector vice chair sounds like a good idea to me. Mr. Mitchell, are you willing to serve as the
Yes,
president?
sir. No, I'm not, but thank you. And I will say, thank you, Judge, for your willingness to serve as chair. I was serious about the diversity issue. I think we should be very intentional in how we present ourselves to the public. That's why I was the chief of staff of a lot of state agencies, so I know what it's like to be in the public sector, but I also know what it's like to be in the private sector, and I think that's important. I only know what it's like to be a guy, but I know there's a difference in terms of the filter that you see the world. So I would hope that our vice chair would show gender diversity. And candidly, as you look at the statute, it requires that there be a demographic makeup that is similar to the county. Well, I look and I think, oh, state 33% of this county is African American, and I'm guessing 51% are women. It's just a guess. It may be higher in County, who knows? not in my household. I should have 3 boys. But I throw it out there. I really don't, I don't have someone in mind, but I hope that we'll consider a vice chair that is from the public sector and is a woman. We consider someone from the platform. Period.
Commissioner Cummings.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just search from the members of the council. I'd like to nominate Daniel Glenn as vice chairperson. She's clearly from the public sector. She's highly educated, has a doctorate degree. She is a pharmacist. She is a female. She's a minority female. I think she fits all the categories. So I would move the nomination of Ms. Daniel Glenn as vice.
Commissioner, I'll second that.
Can I graciously decline?
I think you're allowed to. Yeah, up front.
I'll take my mask off. I'm honored, and I really appreciate the nomination. I want to serve this committee very well, and I want to know exactly what it is that I'm doing to be able to do that. And with that being said, I am looking at Mr. Connors. Yeah. And I am hoping that you would accept this role. I think that you have the knowledge and the spirit to be able to do this. I would love to be a leader of this committee maybe in a year or 2, but I don't know if I'm ready to do this at this very moment. I'm just being completely honest. And I want to do this full throttle, 100%, and know exactly how to work, how to be an effective member of this committee. So that being said, I appreciate it, but I graciously decline it. I'm hoping that Ms. Connors would take on this responsibility.
Oh, my. And I too am in, give just a little story about myself. I've been in education all my life, and this is just my little piece of the pie, and this is what I know. So this platform is very formal to me compared to my everyday kids. So, I want to learn and I want to do the best job possible, and I'm willing to learn, but I just, what does the co-chair exactly have? What are the extra responsibilities? If I can.
Well, so the best way that I can answer that, I think, is under tab 8 is the bylaws from the other Children's Services Council. Basically, you preside if I'm not, if the chair is not available, you preside.
That's it. Okay, that's why
It's as we define, it's as we define the responsibility. So we're going to have some committees. We're going to have some substantive things that we take on. We're going to have to figure out what we want to do with hiring staff. We're going to have to figure out a lot of things that Michelle Watson's going to tell us about, and that Mr. Akinyemi's going to have to tell us about. So it's going to be, I have never done this. We're going to have to figure it out. We're going to have to figure it out. And we're going to have to establish what the focus and roles and responsibilities are. That's an unsatisfying answer, but it's the truth.
So with that, I'll make the formal motion to bring Principal Connor on as our vice chair.
Now, second. Any further discussion?
I support that wholeheartedly.
That's parliamentary procedure, I guess. I got a motion and a second. Do I need to second on my motion? I didn't get a second on my motion.
What, I'm sorry.
I had a motion and a second for Dr. Graham. Do I need to withdraw my motion?
Probably.
I'll withdraw my motion, and I would accept that as a substitute motion.
Excellent.
For,
Outstanding. All right. So we've got a motion and a second to Commissioner Cummings' motion that Carmen Connor be our vice chair. Any other discussion? Any objection? We're going to show Carmen Connor elected unanimously vice chair. It's a great honor. 5 minutes of honor and then the work begins. Outstanding. Thanks so much. So that's organizational officers. we're gonna need to establish staff. The only other organizational officer that I wanted to consider really isn't, probably doesn't require a vote, but I want to tell you all what I'm thinking, which is that, Ms. Goodman Taylor, who has worked so hard to bring this meeting, until we get staff established, until we get a formal organization, until we get bylaws, that she serve as our council clerk and maintain our minutes and get out our packages for these programs. I don't know if anybody needs a motion or a second, but is that acceptable to everybody? All right. That brings us to review the Florida Open Meetings and Public Records Law. I've mixed our organizational and our orientation. I prepared a really brief summary of the Open Meetings Law. Here's the important thing. Here's the important thing in watching ourselves be nominated for things as part of it. The business of the council happens in publicly noticed open meetings and in no other way. We can't communicate about the business of the meeting amongst our business of the council amongst ourselves in any way except in a publicly noticed open meeting. There's a lot more to the Sunshine Law too. I highly commend to everyone the Attorney General's website on the Open Meetings Law. I suspect everyone on the council knows more about this than I do, but that's the important thing. We can't communicate outside of the publicly noticed open meeting, and the public is entitled to input under Chapter 286. That's my summary of the Sunshine Law. Any discussion of the Sunshine Law? Yes, sir, Mr. Socks.
Judge, I'd just like to make a comment from my recent experience with the Escambia Children's Trust. A point was made because we have already received emails to have this meeting and to organize. When you receive an email, do not hit reply all, because you are in fact then communicating with other members. So that might be a very common practice to reply all, but refrain from much as possible from doing that. Reply is fine, but not reply all. So that's just something we got out on the table and everybody understood and made it a little bit easier.
Thank you. Practical wisdom. Any other comments about it?
I'll throw in a little more practical piece.
Please.
We just received it, even though you're maybe using your personal cell phone, your text messages to each other can still be a public record request if it would be something with on. So, engage in that.
Shortly, and the records of the council are public records, open to the public. The other thing that I'll say about it in our process of selecting a vice chair is a perfect example. Why staff is essential. The way I see it, if I was thinking about this council and this meeting, the purpose of the board is really to set policy, establish procedures and practices, give guidance to the staff. The council is not going to be the operational entity because we can't do anything except as a body open public meeting. It's going to be staff that executes much of the guidance that we establish. And if you think about what it's like to get nominated for something that you don't need to get nominated in an open public meeting the first day. It's the way it has to be. It's the way state government has to work. That's the balance that the Constitution sets in the Sunshine Law. It makes things in some ways more challenging. The benefit of that open public transparency, that accountability is absolutely essential, and it's the law. Sure. That's my spiel on public records law.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Just in terms of, as we're talking about public records, it might be a good idea to see, as long as the county is going to allow us to post our minutes, if we can set up email addresses that are specific to this council. Maybe it's a suffix at the end. And that way, if you get a text message, you can take a picture, email it to yourself, at the Children's Services Council email. I can just tell you, as somebody who gets an awful lot of texts, I love to delete. I really hate a backlog of texts. But I also recognized when I accepted this position that I was going to have to keep them. I don't want to carry two phones. There's no need to. But if we could have an email address that was specific to our role here, that public, if they have opinions, could email it to us here as opposed to our places of business, you'll probably make it a little bit easier. And then if you get a personal text on your personal cell phone, it's real simple to take a picture of it and email it to yourself.
So maybe just one central email address or an email address for each?
I'm sorry, an email. So it would be, I don't know what Leon County suffix is, but, Mitchell at Leon.CSC or something like that.
So I am going to put this on under agenda for the next meeting to look into this because I don't know the answer off the top of my head. Commissioner Cummings, this is something that you know off the top of your head. I do not, but I will run it around.
And Judge Escamilla did set that up with the Children's Trust, so that his ground has already been tread on.
Yeah, maybe
And actually, I asked the Children's Trust there not to assign me a separate email, because I've already got two, and I don't need a third. But I have a folder for all of my Escambia Children's Trust details, so I just put it there. Didn't have to have a separate email address, so we left it as optional for the members of the board. If you didn't want a new email address, you have to choose not.
We will run it.
For the purposes though of the public, and there I listen when the county commission made the nominations that were sent to the governor, I was getting emails and people were like, I'm like, what the heck? I don't even know what you're talking about, right? And do I keep this, do I not keep it? Here's what I would say is it's clear that there are a lot of people in this county that care what we do. And there's a lot of people here today that care about what we do. I don't think we should make it harder on them for us to communicate with us. I think if there is a website through the Leon County government, great. It's a separate standalone website. Going to GoDaddy.com, you can set up a website pretty easily and assign it email addresses. But I think for the public, just knowing our last names might be challenging. I mean, but they can find it at least. And then just having our last name and the whatever, and everybody has the same email address, or suffix, I don't know what they call it, whatever. I think it does make it easier for the public to communicate with each one of us on ideas, concerns, thoughts that they have about what we're here to vote on.
So I will run that to ground before the next meeting. Thank you, sir.
Judge,
Yes,
there's some contacting the county anyway about.
I would very much appreciate it.
I'll second
that. Events, I'll be calling you in the morning. But I think you're right on point, and that's why I wanted to make sure that our agenda and our minutes are out there where people can see when they know they can find them, where our meetings are, the time is published. I think that's really priority one, and hopefully we'll start working on that. I think people know where to go and possibly.
Maybe there's a domain name, TLCSC or TLHCSC.gov or whatever. Someone can check on that, those domains are available.
All right, so emails is on our next agenda. All right, very good, excellent, thanks so much. All right, so that brings us now to steps to establish a legal and effective organization. I ask that we please give our close attention to Michelle Watson, CEO of the Florida Children's Council, who has graciously agreed to address us. CEO Watson, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. First of all, I want to say congratulations to your appointments. These happen to have been the fastest appointments in the history of Children's Services Councils. Meeting that 45-day requirement has been amazing for both Escambia and Leon County. Our dear friends in Alachua had to wait 18 months. And so the fact that those appointments were made timely will allow you all to get to work very quickly on behalf of the children in this community. So thank you for that. So I'm really excited to introduce you to the world of Children's Services Council and all of the great work that you are going to do to better the lives of children in your community. But before that, you all have quite a few administrative tasks that you need to accomplish to become a legal entity. The good news is that our friends at the Department of Economic Opportunity have created what's called a Special District Handbook. This is the Bible of how do you comply with all of the requirements of setting up a special district. How do you make sure that you have a registered agent? How do you make sure that you are noticing the accountability requirements, the budgetary requirements, and applying to participate in the trim process, registering with the Department of Revenue, registering with the Department of Economic Opportunity, sending letters to the House and the Senate, all of these things that you have to do that take away from the really good work of looking at the needs of the community and funding. So one of the things that I would tell you is very quickly in short order is that from an administrative standpoint, you all need to really hit this checklist pretty quickly, knowing that the trim process, and I know that the property appraiser is going to speak to you and give you a timeline for the trim process, but the trim process for this year is going to be coming upon you very, very quickly. And so you all have got to make sure that you are a legally operating entity, you have articles of incorporation, you have your bylaws, and you have done all the registration processes. So with that being said, congratulations, Chair and Vice Chair. And I know that you have a clerk, but my recommendation is that there be some sort of support infrastructure put into place to get you all through this temporary period. And I've also been working a lot with Escambia County. One of the things that they are looking at doing, and I'm just going to give you background on what other CSCs have done. There's no right way. If you all say, I'm glad other CSCs have done it, but we're going to choose a different path, that's fine. In the experience of Alachua County, they had a loaned executive from the county that was able to become the administrator, that was able to facilitate this process as far as standing up the organization, and then they did a thorough search for a executive director. In Escambia County, their county, having been hit with COVID and having to be the entity that was getting a lot of CARES funding out the door, and they were also hit by Hurricane Sandy, did not have the bandwidth to potentially have a loaned executive. And so what they have done is looked to contract with an interim administrator, somebody that can come, become the registered agent, make, complete the items that are a part of this DEO Special District Handbook, be able to then get you to the operational pieces of trim as you all are looking at the needs assessment, identifying some of the budgetary items that you might look at this first year for funding as you're moving forward. So ways that that's been done is directly a loaned executive through a county or a true line of credit. In the statute, it does allow a county to provide a line of credit to the Children's Services Council during their establishment year that would allow them to have some sort of interim administrator be able to purchase equipment, look at building space, depending on what you all prioritize as the need and a timeline. If you are looking to make it to trim this year, that means that you would begin receiving dollars from the property appraiser beginning in October. That means in October, there's the real strong potential that you could have requests for proposals around services simultaneously being created as the collections are happening, which means dollars could hit the street if done really efficiently October 1. If you don't think you're at the point now where you have enough information to really develop a basic budget for this year's worth of services, you then probably would make the trim process until next year, which means that you all are about 18 months out from actually getting dollars on the street. And that is the delicate balance of what is the immediate need Is this community, looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is this community even meeting that basic level of need that for children, such as food security, housing, mental health, we know is a huge issue right now. And so is that an area where you guys potentially look at, this year, maybe we're not gonna fund, we're not gonna go to the full half mil. We might go to a reduced millage, but let's get some dollars out on the street to provide services. And then do that full comprehensive, really thoughtful needs assessment, and then move the millage up over time to be able to fill in those gaps so that you almost have a hybrid model of making sure that the citizens in this community who have voted for this referendum aren't waiting so long to kind of see what that impact is going to be moving forward. So I'm going to take a deep breath there because I feel like I just threw a lot of information out at you. The good news is that you will not have to do this alone. There are 9 other independent children's services councils along with 2 dependent. They chose the dependent model and statute around the state who have lived through everything that you're going through. And so areas where we can help be supportive is we can give you information about what other counties have done. And you all can look at that information and determine if it's applicable to your county. The last thing that we want to make sure that we do is that we're providing resources, but at no time do we ever want to tell a county this is what you need to do. They're so unique. And so we want to make sure that in the decisions that you make, don't necessarily reinvent the wheel in all capacity, but go ahead and beg, borrow, and steal, and kind of tweak some of the things that have done before you that can mirror what you need in your community as you move forward. I definitely think that in this time, there are a lot of needs because of COVID. Some of the needs that were addressed in 2018 could potentially be more or have a necessity, such as mental health. We have heard that. We would have to look at that need. But things that might have been brought up in 2018 that you might have a small reprieve from is that there's a lot of federal funding now flowing into communities. I know that and I'm just using this as an example. You all would have to do the analysis on if it's enough for your community, but early learning is going to be receiving a lot of federal funding for the next 2 years. School districts are going to receive federal funding, and within the requirements of those school districts are the requirements that they do summer and after school programs. So is there the opportunity to kind of look at that whole picture landscape and make really informed choices for this first year, and then think through what that strategic vision is in the out years? Because there's a lot of different things that are in play. And when you are looking at ad valorem assessments, you want to make sure it is the appropriate and right amount for the community, but also provides the right amount of service.
Thanks very much. Questions?
I have a question. Please tell me, what is trim? Define that for me. Is he going to come back?
It's truth in millage.
Truth in millage.
Meaning that whatever we disclose to you in terms of the millage that you're paying, we itemize and detail every single thing, that it is true, it is accurate, it is what it is. And of course, Gina will be going more into that.
Okay. And on average, how long does it take to set this up with another CSC to get through the process on average?
So a lot of it was dependent on the government. Well, let me go back. So the first CSCs, the governor's appointees, depending on how they were created under statute, the Juvenile Welfare Board didn't have governor appointees. They were the first. But it is really dependent on when you can constitute yourself as a board, and then what is that timeline. So some CSCs, depending on when they got their governor's appointment, had to wait that 18-month period. And some CSCs were able to draw down dollars that very first year and put dollars out on the street in October. One of the other things that you all have to contemplate is that, while you have programs around the county that are already offering services, it is absolutely true that you are going to be in there to help complement those programs, right? You're going to look at ways that you can either extend services to a population that's not getting services, to look at a way to provide services maybe a little bit differently as an innovation to some of the more restricted dollars. But one of the things you're going to have to consider is that those programs with this new influx of dollars are going to have to scale up. They're going to have to hire staff. They're going to have to make sure that those staff are trained, that they understand the outcome measures that you are setting for them as part of receiving these dollars. And so that really potentially takes, depending on how much of a grant award that they get, could take 2 to 3 months to scale. Which means that within your first year of funding, as far as services are concerned, you're probably looking at 9 months, right? 9 months full of services. And so those are all of the things that when you are looking at setting your ad valorem, your ability to spend down those dollars while balancing the fact that all of your programs are going to be ramping up and going through some sort of transition. That just because you give them the dollars not to roll on doesn't mean that they're ready to provide services.
So, any other questions?
Yes, question. There's a lot of questions. We all are probably lots of questions going on. So my first question is trim dates. I know for the school board, we have to approve the budget, and as a body, we have to meet those dates really well. I want to say in July, so are we held to that same? So we're looking at literally 2 months that we would need to establish a budget, approve for that money. Okay. Thank you. And then my second point, I want to recognize, I think she's here, and we're tying in with DHS. So human service organizations are very used to this grant process. We're talking about the time it takes, the energy involved, the hiring, the reporting of outcomes, the setting of outcomes, but making sure everything is done right, and that takes a lot of time, a lot of human capital. And so I would ask that we include them into our discussion when we talk about this. How far, to me, understanding what the nonprofit sector goes through for grant awards, there's just so much involved. October seems very, very soon. But again, I also know the community wants to see this outcome. So I think one of the interesting things that was setting a millage that was maybe partial to 0.5 and possibly doing, doing something quickly with the intent that it could grow in the long run. So,
Absolutely. And that is completely a community choice. I'm here to give you background on what's happened before. One of the things that, going with from our community to their backgrounds, I'm just telling you, lessons learned, is those that did go to the full half mil, some of the smaller micro community programs that are really important, that have the relationship with those families in very specific areas, and understand how to work with those families and what those families really need from a very targeted intervention, but yet might not get a lot of federal dollars or state dollars through programming. It gives them the opportunity to go through and really learn what the CSC is going to expect from them as far as a budget, as far as outcomes, as far as what is the data system you're going to use to collect that to report back, without looking like the first year you've encumbered all the dollars, it kind of went to all the big guys who were ready to catch it, and then all of a sudden we still have really large community gaps, or you're not seeing the uptake in participation because it is such, sometimes services are so community driven. And it's about the relationship that we heard earlier, and it's about the trust. So those are just some examples from the field. We also have had some communities go to the full 0.5 millage, and at the end of the year, they did revert substantial funding that was underspent, and it accrued into a fund balance. which they can go ahead and reallocate. But that tells, depending on just your community and, the will and the way that you want that presented, they both tell different stories. So you have to decide which story is best for your community. Did you take a step incremental approach to assessments, or did you take the full approach to assessments, but yet with a long-range plan that you spend on that fund balance? So it is all based on how you all think the community will respond.
Yes, thank you, Judge Surstrom. And I certainly appreciate the overview that has been provided to us about decisions that we need to make long range and short range as well. But I think right now, what we need to just focus primarily on is the organizational portion right now. I understand there are timelines for registering as an organization, secretary of the Department of State now. And there are just little things that we need to do before we get to the decision of the millage and what might be what happens. So right now, I can say this, the Leon County Commission voted a couple of meetings ago to give authority to the county administrator to engage in conversations with the Children's Services Council if there is a request from the Children's Services Council for assistance, including advanced financial assistance, with some cooperative agreement that once the Children's Services Council begins receiving their funding, there would be an agreement for repayment of any advance funding, disbursement. So I recommend to get us off the ground right now that we empower the chairperson to contact county administrator and just discuss perhaps not only advanced funding, but perhaps some sharing of staff as part of that advanced funding, so that the administrative duties that we need to do right now so that we can become a viable entity can be done immediately. Once we do that, and I see on the agenda where we have to have a bylaws committee. So there are things, certain steps that we have to make sure we put in place before we get to the second step, which the system has pointed out that we as a council do not provide service. We have to procure services from service providers. One of the things, probably one of the initial things we also need to do is consider whether or not we will hire an executive director or whether we will secure the services of an entity. There are entities and groups that provide that type of service. But I think the most immediate thing, however, is the administrative portion. And so I can make that in the form of a motion in session that this council give you the authority to communicate with the county administrator, which the county commission has already given authority to do so, and express whatever needs or concerns we need financially and for personnel to get us started.
Thanks so much. So there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'm in a second, and can I ask you a question just for clarification purposes on your motion, Commissioner? So it seems like we're doing two things. One, we're authorizing our chair to go and meet the county administrator to essentially set up a borrowing funding mechanism that once tax dollars begin to roll into the CSC will repay. The second portion of your motion, it sounded like, is that funding would be for staff and is it staff, an interim director or a local organization. And I'm totally good with the motion. I would ask that you consider one thing. I love the idea so that we can get moving quickly in terms of our organization, and so we're effective, that that the county maybe loan the council an interim executive director, and I would wholeheartedly support your motion as long as we understood that that interim was not applying for the full-time executive director spot. I just don't want to send this message like, wink, wink, here we go, and leave everybody in this awkward position. But there's so many other really qualified people out there. So if I understand your motion correctly, it's sort of twofold: funding mechanism and a staffing component that funding mechanism would pay for. And we would leave it to our chair, who I think is perfectly qualified to work with the county administrator on that.
Absolutely.
Is that okay?
And I was thinking more so personnel to help with the initial paperwork and startup rather than designating that person as an interim executive director.
And I'm assuming you're wanting me to go talk, and I'm not going to be binding the council until we get back together.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. You wish to be there?
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna add in, I think maybe the terminology was an administrative director versus an executive director. So,
Just a question as well.
Sure.
As we are applying more or less for a loan through the county to get us up and going from an administrative support standpoint, you also have the requirement to develop a plan. And that plan, I assume, is going to include resources outside of this council, maybe to include even some consulting or outside support. Yes or no? Maybe. And as we look to a funding source short term until we move to that next level of tax support, should we also request the county to give us an allowance for that amount as well, as long as it's reasonable?
Mr. O'Brien, could you elaborate just a little bit? I'm not sure I'm following.
Well, we have a requirement to develop a plan. That plan, I assume, is going to require some support. And I don't know if the intent is to engage an outside group, a consulting group or a support group.
Meaning for the needs assessment.
The needs assessment, yes. And recognizing that could come with an expense, probably will come with an expense. We need to request the county to extend funding to include that, or do we want to wait until?
Part of this is anticipating item 7, when the county attorney is going to talk to us about an interlocal agreement for starting funding. So maybe we can hold that particular thought until we hear from the county attorney. Fair enough. Oh, there's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Yes.
One, this is the question through Ms. Watson. Thank you for being here. Good to see you. We talked to the Scambia about the concept of a registered agent. Would the role of the county that we're talking about in this motion be able to fill that role as well? It would have to be a separate entity as a registered agent, correct?
Let me, if you don't mind, let me answer that, because I skipped over that part of the agenda by accident. The county has agreed to provide us with a registered agent, which is Ms. Gibbon Taylor.
Stephanie Holloway.
Ms. Stephanie Holloway. So yes, they've agreed to. I apologize for those for getting that. Now there's a motion in a second. Any other debate? Let's do it this way. Any objection? Anybody object to me talking to Mr. Paul? All right, so we'll show the motion carrying unanimously. And that brings us, Mr. Agnelli, for your patience. Thank you so much, sir.
If I may, please.
Please.
To Mr. Chairman, the Honorable Justice Honorable Cummings, Honorable Strickland, and ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and thank you so much for accepting this very good responsibility bring us here to speak with you today. I'm honored to be here with you in three capacities. First and foremost, as a legal property appraiser, it is my duty to help to assess any property being levied for any purposes in Leon County. We've done anything from storm collection to, of course, the three most important one is the county commission, city commission, and the school board. But we've had anything levied over time, and it's our goal to help in that assessment and to kind of help you walk through the process. And so that's my primary reason for being here, and we look forward to doing that. My second reason for being here is average poverty reduction and children advocates. And so I'm delighted that this year's passed. I look forward to great things for all of you to really help. I know nationally there has been a goal to cut poverty by 50% for so many years. I look forward to hopefully you all setting similar goals to your mission as we move forward. We will be here to support you in that capacity. But my third reason, probably my for being here to review and now is because of one man, Chief Justice from. This is an incredible man that I want to know over time. In my 3 years as chair of the Public Safety Commission, which he also already served on with me, I've seen great things. You may not remember, I went to the legislature. We talked to the legislature about getting mental health funding. You spoke very eloquently. You always listen to people when they come to you. So when you call me, I thought you were going to be able to be in full force. So I didn't bring quite an army with me. Sorry for the expression, because we want to help. We want to make sure that this is successful. I'm so glad that you get to be the chair. I hope you take it from right here. You have incredible things to offer for this council. So I have with me here today 3 of my staff members. To your far left, Ms. Valencia Scott, the Deputy Director of our Community and Outreach Services. Secondly, I have with me Ms. Chris Lewis, is our Director of IT, is our IT guru. One of the things about assessment is coding. You have to code properties appropriately, give them codes, so that when you assess, the numbers will come out just like that. If the coding is not done properly, you may not get the right number. So Chris has a very, very incredible role to play in helping to code each password appropriately. So when we do our assessment, get that item, we can tell you this number is going to moving forward. With me also, probably the star of our team here, Ms. Gina Fletcher. She's our Director of Tax Law Compliance. She works with DOR and all taxing authorities. She's going to be your primary contact for communication, for resources, and she's agreed to go on a flight today and try to her best to kind of walk through the process of what needs to happen. But before I do that, I want to kind of comment on 2 things, if I may. Just listen to the conversation here. Ms. Watson, thank you so much for your presentation. You raised some good points, and I wanted to piggyback briefly. And just first one is more of a correction. Actually, I think we don't collect taxes. That's the reason my last job. She collected taxes, but she depends on us to tell her how much we collect and how we get to this number. And we have a very lengthy process of appeal, of reviews. People don't have the numbers, they have the timeline here to reveal that. And what sets that up is the trim notice. You ask her about trim. And I tell people all the time, when you get your trim notice in September, last week in August, look at the fine print available at the top. It's going to tell you, if you don't like the numbers, you have to maybe September 11 or 14, whatever. Well, most people don't look until they're about to pay in November or February. So I don't like this number. So again, I walk into the process. So those are the important things that I always make a distinction. Secondly is the point of when do you start this process? And we've debated on very and we go through it. And I've had to the two camps in terms of your position how moving forward. I think Ms. Watson make a point that Honorable Speaker kind of support. You could start with a very small number just to get it going. Get on the payroll, tax roll this year and keep moving forward. But you follow his comments, take your time, don't do that. Get along, get things going, maybe get on the tax roll next year. Because right now, the clock starts June 1. So even though we still work with you until maybe August, getting on the tax roll, I think the audit process starts on June 1. But by the time we mail our train, it needs to be on there. If it's not on there, it's not going to make it for the next tax year. So I just wanted to kind of have you thinking on those two things. So Gina, if you could please come with there.
Good afternoon. I'm Gina Fletcher. I'm the Director of Taxable Compliance in PAMA at the Property Appraiser's Office. But on a personal note, as a private citizen, congratulations to all of you. I know it's going to be a wonderful service you're going to provide to our children. But for the office, I'd like to go over a couple of our timelines, which I think you all have here in your agenda. You actually have two timelines. But the one about our property appraisal rules gives you a couple of timelines. The first one is our assessment date. We assess all property on January 1. And then by June 1st.
Yes. We're on tab 6. Go ahead.
Okay. And then by June 1st, we will provide you a written estimate of the taxable value of all non-exempt property. So I think the biggest struggle for your organization right now is learning how to be a tax authority and what your role as a tax authority can be on top of the services you're going to provide the children. So June 1, I would need to know if you're, before June 1, if you're planning on being on the tax roll this year. Because I would have to provide you that written estimate by June 1st. And with that written estimate of taxable value, you're going to use that to help you establish your millage rate based on your budget that you're proposing. So June 1st is taxable value. It's going to help you develop that millage rate. Take the budget, divide by the millage rate, the taxable value, divide by your budget, and make the millage rate. So without those two things, it's going to be very hard to meet that June 1st deadline. Knowing what your budget is going to be, use that taxable value. And then by mid-August, we are mailing our proposed tax notices, which is our trend. I would need to know your millage rate by mid-August or before mid-August, so that I can, and I also have to reconfigure our trend notices. So this is something we need to know pretty quickly as an organization. If you're going to be on this year's roll, we have to do some programming to get you on our trend notices, to get you on our taxable estimates, so that you can be included on the tax bills this year to collect your funds. So it would need to happen pretty quick. And then mid-September is usually the deadline for taxpayers to file their petitions to the Value Adjustment Board. And that's when they're able to protest the valuations that we place on the property. They cannot protest their taxes because we don't establish taxes. We only establish the valuation. Millage rates are established by the tax authorities. Millage rates are what calculate taxes. It's not done by our own. October, usually around the first week, second week of October, is when we certify our final tax roll to the Department of Revenue. All the tax authorities and to the tax collector to collect their taxes. So that timeline is coming up really quick. And that's a lot for you all to try to absorb. I can go a little deeper into this, but I believe, you've already heard this, that the, Department of Revenue is who you need to, establish organization with. They do have training resources for trails on their website. They have, video training, they have workbooks and instructional workbooks for the taxing authorities on how to establish the millage rates. Especially important for you, your first year, and I definitely agree that potentially using their county government board of county commissioners as support, because they do this, they're familiar with it, to help you establish what that looks like in that process, and getting it established with the Department of Revenue would be a good thing to do. So to get a little deeper into it, July 1, when we submit our preliminary rule for approval to the Department of Revenue and the tax authorities, that's our preliminary values, it's not our final values. But those are the numbers, again, you're going to be using to establish your millage rates with. And at that point in time, you will receive an email from our office instructing you how to complete the Department of Revenue forms, the DR 420. And you can do that through the Department of Revenue web portal called eTrip. That's why another reason why you need to contact them is they'll have to give you a username and password to their web portal so that you can access those forms online. You'll fill them out online. It's really easy. It's self-calculating, and it's immediate. So as soon as you fill it out and you acknowledge that it's accurate and you submit it, they receive it and they review it. So we will upload our values and our data to those forms online. I will send you an email telling you that has occurred, and then you have access to them to update them with your proposed millage rates according to whatever you determine at your hearing.
I have a question. Okay, so it looks like by June 1st is when you're telling us you need to know something very soon. And by mid-August, you're mailing out the property tax notices. What is our drop-down dead to let you know what it is that we're doing? So do you need to know by June 1st, or do you need to know 2 weeks before mid-August? Do we need to let you know by July 1st? What's the timeline?
For us to send you the estimate is just a memo. That's not as big a deal as the rest of it. Just including your name on a memo is the fine. But I would say by June 1st, I need to know something so that I can get the rest of the programming done by July.
And the something that you need to know is a proposed budget, or?
What I need to know is, are you planning on collecting a millage rate this year?
And you need a number for that millage. Yeah.
You'll go through that process after June 1, but I need to know, are you going to collect this year? Or are you going to wait until next year?
If I can interject, I kind of simplify it. You have to make two decisions very quickly. A, are we going to try to collect this year? Let us know that by the other June. The actual millage number, we need to know that it's going to be 0.35 or 0.25, maximum 0.5. If you can make those decisions, then we can kind of go from there.
Right.
Yes, and that big decision of the millage rate, does that need to be made by June 1 as well?
No, I just need to know that you're going to collect the millage rate this year.
But we need the value before we go out. So that's everything.
Right. There's a deadline for when you actually submit the proposed millage to us. But again, that's not even important until you know you're actually going to collect. So really the most important.
She answered my question, yeah, thank you. So there's a serious sense of urgency here, is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, just because I'm looking at the clock and also looking at the agenda, can I make a motion to extend the meeting to 5:30?
Is there a second? Motion to extend till 5:30, is there a second?
I'll second.
Yes, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Anybody, as long as we have a quorum, we can.
Yeah, we don't have to say, I just am like nervous that you said it for a time specific and.
Yeah, so there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries unanimously. The meeting is extended until 5:30. Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Okay, so again, in July, when I send you an email, I will tell you that 420s are uploaded to the program web portal. You'll go there, you'll fill it out. You'll have a deadline to complete it by. It will be in the email. All the links will be in the email. I've given you a sample of that in this outline. And then, and that's usually about August 4th, 5th. Is when it's 35 days after the certification of tax roll. Tax roll certified July 1st, 35 days later will be August 5th. So depending on what day August 5th falls on, it would be 4th. So if it's the 5th falls on Saturday, it would be Friday. So if the 5th falls on Sunday, it will be Monday. But usually it's around that time. Is your deadline to get us the military after we send you the email. Once you get those back to us, we will prepare all the millage rates from all the authorities. I send that back to all the authorities and say, did I interpret your form accurately? Did I get the millage rate right? Did I get the hearing date, time, and place correct? And phone number. And then you'll send an email me back and say yes or no. I'll correct it, or it will be accurate. I'll get it to my IT guy to get it into our system so that it'll print the trim. Trims will go out. If there's questions about your millage rate or the taxes collected for your authority, they're to call you. The hearing date and time is for your budget hearing, for the public to come and listen in on the budget, proposed budget and millage rate. And there's, I guess, statutes and laws for you to advertise all that information, adopt your final budget and millage. You'll get that back to us after the trim notices are complete, which is usually about the first week of October.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
So our choices are to let you know that we intend to collect funds this year. And let you know, which means we would need to establish what village we want to spend prior to June 1. But you're not asking for a budget, is that correct?
I'm not asking for the millage rate or the budget prior to June 1. Okay. I'm just asking, are you intending to collect this year?
So if we intend, yes, then that money is ours October 1st, which means that we will need to act swiftly on spending them.
Actually, the tax notices don't go out till November 1st, and that's when they start getting collected. And the collector, or the clerk of court is going to be the one that can be the fund you based on your bylaws.
So then the money.
June 1's just a guess.
Yeah, so
Right. I'm trying to establish exactly when the money would be in our hands, and if our option, if we say, no, we can't move that fast, then basically we are delaying receiving funding for another full.
Right, your funding would fund you after November 1st with the tax notices, the actual tax bills are known by the tax collector.
Okay.
And if we say no on June 1, you have to wait.
Another whole year.
So June 1, we could today, if somebody wanted to make a motion, say we would like to alert the property appraisers on this, that it is our plan to be a taxing authority for
this year or next year.
Right. And on June 1st, you would send us a notice saying, or we'd send that to you. Then you would go out and do your assessment of all the property in Leon County and figure out what that assessed value is. We take that number and we say, what's our budget? So we have plenty of time between June 1 and when you report back to us what the assessed value is.
That's up to you whether or not you have enough time. But June 1st, will give you your taxable value that you have, your estimated taxable value that you can use to estimate against your budget.
Yes.
The millage rate needed to fund your budget.
And if on June 30th, we decided, even though on June 1st, we said we wanted to be included, if after we went through our process, I'm trying to give us a little more time, we could change our mind. Am I right?
Could we say that the
The risk is that you would end up on the trim list
maybe to clarify, Paul, could we say yes today? But set the rate at 0.
Yes.
At some later date, we determine.
Or a very,
So I'm gonna tell you what I plan on doing regardless of what you say today, is I'm gonna start programming.
yes.
Because you're gonna start collecting next year.
Give us some flexibility.
So, Steve, I know you sort of are fitting nicely in here as well, but I think that we have a decision to make. In terms of, one, I think it is safe to say that we are going to spend money this year. So it's probably safe to say to the property appraiser's office, yes, add us to the list. Okay, so that's the first point I'll make. Second point I'll make, and I think this is really what we should be discussing, is what, and this is kind of to Ms. Watson's point, what's the spending gonna look like? I'm gonna, sort of share with you all sort of my personal feelings. I was a huge advocate for the Children's Services Council. I voted enthusiastically for it. I'm one of 65% that did. There are 35% in our county who didn't. And I don't think one of them did it because they don't like children or they want bad things to happen to children. I think what they're worried about is the accountability of how their money is being spent. And so, when I heard Ms. Watson talking, I thought, no, I mean, I want to make a difference. I want to make a difference as quickly as possible, but I don't want to make a difference that just kind of feels good because we're doling out other people's money. I want to make a difference because I know that that money is going to impact the lives of kids in our community. So I, as a member, want to say, yes, ma'am, add us to that list on June 1. And then as to my fellow council members, I'd like to say, I want to have this discussion. I think I want to have it publicly, and I'd like it to be on the next agenda so that people can come and make us wise. I'm not rushing to spend the community's money on programs that just feel good or sound good. But we are going to need some money to pay for staff and to pay for email accounts. Let's just say we get those, at $1.70 a month. But nonetheless, there's going to be some money. So with that as sort of a backdrop, I would like to make a motion that we commit to, and I don't know who the appropriate person is to alert you all, but that we commit that we would like to be on the trim notice when it goes out at the end of August. Again, it doesn't lock us into any amount to be spent. We all can accept the fact we're going to spend a little, even if it's just on a needs assessment.
So before we put it to a second, when Mr. Minor was telling me, we have the county attorney here, and I'm not precisely certain that I understand the legal aspect, but I think it needs to be noticed that actual decision needs to be noticed for the next hearing.
Oh,
that's not on the agenda for today. But I think it's the point. So what I would suggest is that we convert your motion to the following thing. That's going to be on the agenda for the next meeting. Also, that would give me a chance to report back what Mr. Long says when I talk to him about the funding that might be available to us through the county.
Chelsea, what is the county's public notice for meetings? What's the period of time? In two weeks?
Usually it's the regular schedule at least 7 days in advance, so that's notice. So that's as soon as it's the street, if that's really the minimum that you want to provide unless there's an emergency or a special meeting call for some contingent circumstance.
So I'm just looking at it's the 6th, and that's all the only reason I was asking that question. And I know we have future meetings on the agenda, so I'm going to shut up.
My plan is for May 20th.
Oh, good. Okay.
Was what I was going to propose. But all right, excellent. So you're presentation has been so good that it has provoked a fair amount of communication amongst ourselves. It has been extraordinarily helpful.
Thank you.
Is there, property appraiser and community, I just, am always so honored to be in your presence and I just feel privileged when we're together. And thank you. Let me just say, how about that leadership talent?
Class 21, best class ever.
My wife is class 17.
Can I
All right.
just ask a question before we?
Yes,
I
please.
apologize. I just want to make sure I'm clear. I know that by June 1st, we just have to let you know yes or no. But what I don't understand is when do you need to know what the budget is? So if we say yes, by June 1st, when is our deadline to say, this is our budget, this is what we want to be able to set as our millage rate? What is that date?
The proposed millage rate, I will need to know by August 5th.
August 5th, okay, so prior to, so we have between June 1st and August, well, right now, I guess, and August 5th to decide.
Your budget.
Okay.
And then in June, when I give you your taxable value, your estimated taxable value, use that with your budget to determine your rate. You have until August 5th to tell me that proposed rate. And then you have further deadlines in there to have your public hearings.
That's fine. I just
And
have
then finalize all of that, and then once it's final, when we submit our final roll, we'll also be submitting forms to you to provide us a final millage.
Thank you. August 5 is the number I was looking for.
Outstanding. I think we are clear. Thank you so much for being with us and for this incredibly informative presentation. I'm now going to call upon, with the council's permission, County Attorney Osteen to discuss the interlocal agreement for startup funding. County Attorney Osteen, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Judge. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to try to use the tech here. Okay. All right, so I'm a visual person. That usually helps me out and decides that we don't have to look at me. So just to synthesize a little bit of what you've all heard today, as you all know, you were statutorily created by Leon County by ordinance. That ordinance has been codified now in the Code of Laws of Leon County. And what does that mean? There are two different types of districts. There's independent and there's dependent. The difference is if you're a dependent district, then you're basically under some sort of control of the municipality or the county in which that district exists. You are not that. You are independent, which means you are autonomous of the county and the city. But that doesn't mean there's not a relationship with the county. Some of these are, and you'll see that because I'm an attorney, I have the citations in here. These are all statutory. They're also mirrored in now what the Code of Laws of Leon County. They're going to do certain things that the county will benefit from. Like they're going to benefit from the information and statistical data and the research that you conduct that also help the county decide the needs of children in the county, just like you're going to use that data for yourself. The other thing you're going to do is you're going to identify through your needs assessment all the things that are laid out in the statute and in the code that you've already talked a lot about. That item will be provided to the Board of County Commissioners. The statute says that you are to provide that code immediately after members are appointed and officers are elected. So as you all know, that's your main priority, aside from the tax. So the other thing you're going to do is provide an annual report to the county, the Board of County Commissioners, no later than January 1st. It has to contain all the statutory and code information. Okay? On a quarterly basis, you're going to provide to the county commission information about their financial situation as well. Now, this is new, and there are time frames for some of these things, and not so much for others. But each of these quarterly reports is due within 10 days, exclusive of weekends and legal holidays after the expiration of each quarter. Now, the other thing on the budget side that you'll do is once you have adopted your budget and your final millage rate each year, you will provide that to the Board County Commission as soon as possible. Now, they just get a copy of your information. They have no jurisdiction or authority to tell you what to do with it, or that you have to change it, or anything else. It's informational only. Now, what were the county's responsibilities and what are the ongoing responsibilities of the county to you? They adopted that ordinance that we already referenced. They provided it for referendum, approved by Leon County voters. They selected that slate of nominees for the initial board. Congratulations to all of you, by the way. And they submitted that to the governor, who has made his appointment. Now, on an ongoing basis, the county will continue to submit that slate of nominees as there are vacancies on your board. So now we get to the funding piece. This has been talked about again. The statute provides for it, as does the ordinance, the Leon County Code. The county, as Commissioner Cummings has said, expressed a willingness to provide that initial funding to the CSC, and it did so at its retreat in January. It was also ratified and is now part of the county strategic plan. So what does that look like? So the terms of initial funding would be set forth in the interlocal agreement. That's within your authority as the CSC statutorily, and it's of course within the county's authority to do that. So the next step is a public meeting when it's noticed and the public has an opportunity to comment on that. This board will have to decide whether you want to enter into that interlocal agreement with the county. And if an affirmative vote is taken by this board and that occurs, then there will be opportunity for negotiation with the county about what those terms might look like. Now, you guys kind of already did that a little bit. But then the benefits of those communications between your now chair and county administrator will come back to you for consideration. So all of that, if you move forward and the county moves forward, will be codified in that interlocal agreement. Each of the governing boards will vote on that. And as long as those are votes in favor, the majority votes of those bodies, you're good to go. Do you have any questions for me?
That would indicate that the interlocal agreement is a priority. You get that done quickly. Yes or no?
Well, I would say from an organizational perspective, it would be very important for your body because it is one of the means by which you're going to get your organization up and running. Probably even more so in the short term than the collection of potential millage later this year.
So it is a priority.
I would say so. That decision, yes.
Understanding that the interlocal agreement would be between the Children's Services County and Leon County, is it also the platform in which a letter of credit would be discussed and authorized?
Yes, so really, the phrase interlocal agreement is used when you have an agreement between two governmental bodies, but that is where all of the terms and conditions for any loan would be contained. There was also discussion about maybe the identification of a county staff individual who could assist in the short term. This interlocal agreement could also address that as well. And the terms about the types of expenses for which the county would loan the CSC. So for example, to hire a consultant for the needs assessment or anything else that the CSC feels is necessary in its first year of operation.
Just to further that discussion, and I don't require a commitment, but is it a possibility? Because it'd be interesting to the council. If we chose not to seek funding this cycle through millage, could the loan be something that's paid back in a future year, or does it have to be returned within the year of the, in other words, could the agreement be a multi-year agreement so that it goes beyond the current, or is it tied to the board's fiscal year? I don't know under the county rules what you can agree to, multi-year or not multi-year.
So clarifying the question, Are you asking about the repayment timeframe, or are you talking about the?
Yeah, if we don't get
upfront?
revenue until next year in November, we wouldn't be able to make repayment to a loan that was occurring in the current year. So I wanted to know if that's a possibility. It's not a possibility, it sort of accelerates our need for revenue.
That would be within the discretion of the Board of County Commissioners to accept the interlocal agreement with those terms for an extended payback period.
Is it a possibility though that it could be a point of discussion?
It's not illegal. It's not illegal.
That's good attorney response.
So that being said, we need to authorize representatives of CSC to begin negotiating this interlocal agreement.
I thought that the
We did.
body
We
took
already-
that action earlier to authorize your chair.
Excellent, excellent. Any other questions?
Okay, one more question.
Yes, go ahead.
Quarterly report, financial, were you referring to after the beginning of the issue?
Yeah.
Quarterly starting, are we like starting at this meeting?
If we spend money before June 30, we would be reporting something to the county on July 10th.
Well, I think the answer to that would be, you are now constituted. What I would also say though is it would be a pretty short report.
It might be a
You don't
one
really
page
have
report.
any expenditures or
I have no
money
money.
invested or anything like that.
The judge goes out and sees money. The report.
Yes, the report is, there is no money. All right, excellent. Thanks so much. Any other questions? Yes, Ms. Watson?
I think one of the keys of that presentation was that you all would have to derive a budget even for that interlocal agreement.
Sure.
So deriving that budget, publicly noticing it, and making sure that's available. And then what I would say is please make sure that you understand that you all are now under chapter 287 for procurement. So any sort of procurement or request for
Proposal, my just started working. Or request for proposal that you put out in front of you, please know that there are thresholds in that statute that, from a timeline perspective, have very strategic timelines attached to it.
And as to, would attorney services be something that could be proposed in that agreement? From the county?
Yeah, and there is,
Well, Walter, I didn't hear your question.
Would attorney services be something that could be agreed to in that agreement?
Could the budget, if we make an interlocal agreement, could we use some of the money to pay for attorneys?
Yes, yes, you could.
All right, so thanks so much. And the 287 procurement applies to us spending money, not just borrowing money from the county.
Correct. So as you're developing that budget, if you are going to look at certain thresholds for consultants, contracts, needs assessments, you just be aware of those spending thresholds and those requirements around procurement.
And if in the interlocal agreement, we have the county doing those procurements, they would be following their rules and their bylaws, right? We would not have we wouldn't have our executive team established at that point. It would be the county that would be doing that on our behalf.
I can share with you what the county does. There are certain sections of chapter 287 that apply to local governments and there are others that do not. So for the portions of 287 that do not apply to the county's adopted its own procurement policy. And we follow that. It's loosely based on what's in those provisions in 287, but we have our own policy to ensure that we have a process.
there's no prohibition though against the county or this council utilizing the state term contract if we wanted to, if we were looking to do a needs assessment, for example. There are loads of vendors
Consulting
out there.
services contract.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Department of Management Services procures, was there before it came to the county, procures statewide services for statewide use. This body would be an eligible user and could absolutely buy for the state term contract.
Yes, Commissioner Campbell.
Yes, Attorney Osteen, so any interlocal interlocal agreement that's proposed by our chairperson, this system with the county administrator. The county administration will be reviewed by the county legal office for legality. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, anything else for County Attorney Osteen? Excellent, thank you so much. Before we turn from 7, I just want to draw your attention to something that I put in here. I'm sorry, it's under tab 6. If you look at the last page of tab 6, this sort of for food for thought. I did a chart of what other children's services councils are spending on their administrative costs on their staff. And this is just for something for us to consider. And I arranged it by population of the county served, so it gives you some idea of cost. I don't think there's really much for us to talk about or to vote on. I think you've given me my direction for us. With that, I'll turn to tab 8, which is establish the bylaws committee. Under tab 8, there's 2 sets of bylaws, one from Alachua, one from Hillsborough. They're really just in there for consideration. There's nothing to do other than for us to figure out how we want to establish our bylaws. Typically, in these bylaws, the chair is a member of each committee. I would entertain a motion for somebody else to help me write bylaws. Would anyone want to be on a bylaws committee? Ms. Glenn, this seems like just a learning opportunity for you.
I will gladly accept it.
Thank you.
Absolutely, don't mind.
So far, Glenn and Schuster are the proposal. That's our proposed bylaws committee for now. Anybody else willing to serve? Mr. Saxon, already knows so much from the
I'd love to participate, Judge. I'm all in.
All right. So Sachs, Glenn, Schuster. Anybody else interested in being on the bylaws? I think I've got the victims. So is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
What's it going to be?
But my motion is going to be that you want an establishment of a bylaws committee.
Yes.
That we establish a bylaws committee. We need to make the motion as to who's going to be in there.
Yes.
Okay. Then is Lang, Judge Georgestrom, and
Mr. Sack.
Thank you.
Now, Ms. Conner, the reason I didn't suggest you as a victim is because you've already been Shanghai. So there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any objection? Seeing no objection, the motion carries unanimously. Bylaws committee, Schuster, Glenn, and Stocks. And I'll tell you, I was very heartened to see how short these bylaws are. I absolutely intend to be even briefer. Establish the schedule of future meetings. We're now on 9. Establish, and the members of the bylaws committee will get with you and we'll get out a public notice for our bylaws committee meeting. I'm going to try and get you guys a proposed set of bylaws for us to work on. Okay, establish schedule of future meetings. My proposal for the next future meeting is May 20, that's a Thursday. I know that I have cleared May 20 on my calendar. Thursday.
It's clear on mine.
May 20 at 3 o'clock. May 20 at 3 o'clock is what I'm proposing. All right, so without objection, May 20 at 3.
That's a holiday. It's a state holiday, it's Emancipation Day.
It's what day?
Emancipation Day.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was unaware.
Try that 19.
How about the 19th? Ms. Goss will kill me, but how about May 19, Wednesday? Clear my calendar. May 19? May 19? May
3
That
o'clock.
works better, actually.
May 19 it is, excellent, May 19. Make my apologies for messing that up. Every day, another opportunity for me to make a mistake. So the agenda for the next meeting, here's what I think I've heard. Number one, report of communication with Mr. Long, interlocal agreement. Interlocal agreement is for financing, staff support. Is that acceptable to everybody? That's agenda item number 1. Is that acceptable? All right, so that's agenda item number 1 will show without objection. Agenda item number 2 is report of the bylaws committee, and with any luck at all, we'll have the proposed set. Item number 3 is the question of whether we give notice to the property. And I'm going to have to reorder these because I'm doing these off the top of my head. Item number 4 is, I think we need to discuss a preliminary budget. Preliminary budget. Okay with everybody? While we're on that topic, is there any thoughts about how we go about discussing the preliminary budget beyond how? And I guess what I'm asking you is, we've got to hire staff.
Judge, your recommendation might be to reach out to Alachua County and ask them for their original budget, since they're the most recent CAC, and see if they can offer us an example.
All right, so I think that's outstanding.
So we'll point out that they don't really do things very well in Alachua County.
Just as a general.
Swimming from a rabbit hole.
And Judge, if the Scambia generates one, I'll be sure to bring it as well. I'll be involved now.
We'll certainly want to do better. All right, so we'll do that. So we'll discuss it.
Judge, I would have that along that agenda would be a question of around PD or whatever kind of staff position. And then we talked about someone who would not want to permanently, but someone who's given.
An interim hiring of an interim administrator, executive administrator.
And please clarify what you guys were talking about, registered agent, Stephanie Holloway, I heard that earlier.
Just a registered agent is really.
Yes, it's registered.
Good, if,
I think it's under DEO, right?
No, it's actually, the registered agent provisions in part of the state.
I could be wrong. Ms. Osteen, go ahead. Are you going to talk to me? What are we doing? Oh, okay. Okay, everything fine.
So sorry to interrupt your business, but it's come to our attention that the bailiffs were not put on advance notice, that the municipal has been past 5. One of the entrances is already closed because it automatically closes at 5. The other closes at 5:15. They will extend it till 5:30, but what that means, at that point,
All meetings should be over.
All right.
because the public can't get in either, so that becomes a legal issue.
All right, fair enough.
Before we adjourn, could we have that ethics presentation next? And if we need to cover financial reporting, get that off the table.
Ethics presentation, say I didn't hear the last part you said.
The financial reporting requirements.
Okay.
the report needs to look like.
Your financial disclosure.
Yep.
Judge, I don't know if we need to have the outcomes from county discussion, whether we're going to discuss funding with.
I'm sorry.
If we need to add to the agenda outcomes from county funding discussion. Outcomes from county discussion about funding, do we need to have that on the agenda, what the county said, are we?
Yes, that is
You have that,
item one.
okay, thank you.
That is item one. Any other items for the agenda proposed? Anything else proposed?
I have just one suggestion, Judge, and it won't kill me, but I sort of think maybe we should, at least for the first couple of meetings, maybe make them a little earlier, only because it's hard to go later. It sounds like we're gonna have an even fuller agenda, and with the discussion of a budget, I just throw out the idea of maybe starting the meeting at 2 o'clock as opposed to 3:00.
2 o'clock, 5:19.
On that issue of upcoming meetings, I'm wondering if just like this 19th, 20th, having to change the 19th, if we should do a doodle poll to make sure that we're trying to meet at the best times, because we'll probably already have it headed to the.
Fair enough. So is it, trying to assume, is Ms. Osteen still here? Is it acceptable for us to do a doodle poll for like the next 3 meetings, something like that? Is that going to violate a doodle poll where you send out an electronic poll to try and establish when the next meeting is going to be? Is that, we lose Ms. Osteen? We're going to assume that's okay, and I'll talk to Ms. Osteen and make certain that it's not violating the open meetings law somehow. But the proposal is for our next meeting on 5/19 to begin at 2 o'clock. Any objection? 2 o'clock it is. By unanimous consent, 2 o'clock it is. Member comment, any member comment? And public comment, Mr.
Chairman, I would press one in favor, I'd like to take a negative photograph. Together, if you follow my instructions, we'll just take 1 moment. I would like you all in front of that podium.
All right. We are adjourned.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, do you need our staff to come on the 19th? You wanted us to be here, you just communicate to us your decision.
You do not need to be here on the 19th. You're welcome, of course. Well, I'm glad to see you.
I did not hear this about.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We have not said anything. Yes, ma'am, of course. Jack, we don't want to take a picture without Secretary here.
Next meeting?
Yeah.
Throw it out there.
And they gotta get us out of the building.
I think that's where she is.